This is Curious Minnesota, a Star Tribune project that sends staff from the state's largest newsroom hunting for the answers to great questions we receive from you. We're here to answer everything you want to know about the state's people, places, and culture. I'm your host, Erica Pearson. This episode of Curious Minnesota is sponsored by Primrose Schools and the Minnesota Historical Society. The question we want to answer in this episode comes from Aiden Thornton. He's a college student in Duluth.
This call is now being recorded.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sending in your question and appearing on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
What I would love for you to do first is just say your question. Go for it.
The reason I sent in my question was because I've been to Pipestone National Monument a couple times, and they have a really good cultural exhibit in the visitor center. But I was curious to learn more about the historical aspects of the National Monument, things like the Native American history of the area, how they interacted with the area and how it became to be a national monument. And yeah.
Very cool. Thanks a lot.
Of course. I really appreciate you guys including my question in the podcast.
I love this question because I've always been curious about Pipestone. I grew up in Danbury, Wisconsin, near an Ojibwe reservation, and I'd seen the beautiful red pipes and always been curious about the place where they come from. So before we dive in, I should tell you that Minnesota is home to two national monuments, and one of them is Pipestone National Monument in the southwestern part of the state. For thousands of years, Native Americans have quarried a sacred red rock from this patch of Minnesota prairie right outside the town of Pipestone, Minnesota. To find out more about this national monument, I asked reporter J.P. Lawrence to do some digging. He covers the southwestern part of the state for the Minnesota Star Tribune. Thanks so much for tackling this question.
Always glad to be here.
Had you been to Pipestone National Monument before reporting this piece?
Yes, I had gone as a kid to Pipestone National Monument. It wasn't as nice, though. In 2020, they renovated the place, and what's there now is a lot fancier.
Okay, well, I'm wondering, actually, if you could start just by describing this place for those of us who have not been there before. What is it like?
Well, you drive through a lot of prairie, and then on the edge of Pipestone, you get to a visitor center, and inside you can immediately smell some of the sage burning. You walk in through the entrance, there's a couple of exhibits, and then you get to a space where there's several, at least two, pipe carvers. That's the highlight of the trip is you go in and they have family ties to the region. A lot of them have been carving for generations. And they'll just be working and you can talk to them and they'll give you the lowdown on the impact and the importance of Pipestone to their family.
Wow.
And then afterwards, you can go outside and they actually have Pipestone quarries, which was really cool. Like you're walking along the prairie and you'll see like a pit. And in the pit, you'll see the hard rock. And then down below, you can see like lines. And, in those lines, that's where the pipestone is waiting to be extracted.
It's like a hike that you can take through, like along the edges of the quarries?
Yeah. First, you pass by a show quarry, which is cool because it's kind of like a big quarry that you can walk in. And then you can go from there and there's trails. And on those trails, it goes past a bunch of active quarries. You're not supposed to go in there, but you can walk past and you can kind of gaze in and then kind of see, the active quarries that they're still taking the pipestone out of.
Wow. So what is the geological history?
It's kind of a geological miracle. A lot of things had to go right in order for Minnesota to have these pipestone veins. The way I was told it, 1.6 billion years ago, the whole area was a riverbed. And, the clay of the riverbed was buried under sand. And the sand on the top and on the bottom turned into really hard rock, quartzite hard rock. And then the thin layers of clay, that's what got sandwiched in between those layers of hard rock and became what is now known as pipestone or cat-like. Catlinite is the name geologists use because it was from a guy named George Catlin who visited in the 1800s. Amongst the tribal nations, though, they say just call it pipestone.
Are there any other places where this pipestone is found?
Yeah, but it's not as good.
Not as good for carving or not as good?
I talked to one of the pipe carvers.
Mhm.
He said that there's about 6 other sites. There's, Pipestone in Wisconsin, Pipestone in Kansas, but it's harder to carve because they have more of that hard rock quartzite kind of embedded within like the soft parts. So it's just not as good. It's not as good to carve and it doesn't feel as nice. So got rave reviews for the Minnesota Pipestone.
That's so interesting. And can you describe, I know you said soft, but like what would you compare it to?
like 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 chalk, like sidewalk chalk. As they were carving, some of the dust came off, and I was able to taste it. It wasn't the most delicious, but it was.
I
But
love it. You went above and beyond.
I wanted to be able to describe this. It's a really powdery rock. I think it tastes like talc, with a little bit of iron, little bit of. One of the carvers said that the dust that comes off when they're carving, there's just so much of it that comes off that someday they're gonna bury him, and all that's gonna be left is all the pipestone dust he's breathed in.
That's all that would be left. The rock also is like a really beautiful color, right? Can you describe that for us?
Yeah, it's like pinkish red. There's trace amounts of iron. It's oxidizing. I asked like what's the best way to describe it. Yeah, that's what they said. It was pinkish red, and it's a very distinctive red color, kind of like blood a little bit.
Hmm. So you spoke with several people who are carrying on this carving tradition that's been in their families for generations. What are some of the stories that they told you?
Yeah, Travis Erickson, he's been doing it for 4 generations, I think. He was one of the exhibitors, and he said that he's been around pipestone since he was born. He's in his 60s. He learned it from his family, and it's something that he grew up with. Yeah, he used to play with pipestone as a kid. He would stack them as blocks and pretend they were tanks. And yeah, he loves to carry on that tradition. He loves carving. He views himself as like an artist who speaks to the rock. Sometimes you'll see it like a piece of pipestone and he'll think like, oh, this is calling to me. It wants to be an eagle or it wants to be this kind of pipe. And, he has a really deep connection to it.
Which tribe is he a member of?
Sisseton Wahpetons, Dakota Nation. And he was talking about passing it on after 4 generations to the next generation. And one of the issues has been finding people in the new generation to take on pipe making or quarrying. And one of his ideas is having the ability for grandchildren to be able to quarry and make pipes as opposed to, having that direct line. If you could have 1 generation removed from being federally recognized, he feels that that would open up a lot more people who would be able to do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was another carver from the Sisseton Wahpeton Dakota Nation who was there at the same time. I talked to him. His name was Mark Peterson. He's also been demonstrating and he's also been pipe carving for generations. He actually talked to me about taking the pipestone out of the quarries. They use sledgehammers and wedges to break the hard rock so they can get to like the soft pipestone. It's still done like the old-fashioned way, and it's actually it's actually really difficult. It could take a long time, like months or even years, to get that soft pipestone out in a way that doesn't involve explosives.
Wow. Wow.
He says that he's quarrying in the footsteps of his ancestors from thousands of years ago, and he says it's an honor to do it the same way, to make ceremonial pipes and for other uses.
Wow. Well, in the 30s, Pipestone became a national monument. So let's get into that after the break.
At Primrose, our balanced learning approach means exploring academic skills and life skills, combining purposeful play with nurturing guidance from teachers, and setting children up for success in future classrooms. Learn more at primroseschools.com/Twin Cities.
History doesn't only exist in the pages of a book. History exists all around us. You just have to dare to look. Listen to Minnesota Unraveled, a podcast from the Minnesota Historical Society. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
So how did this site become a national monument in 1937?
Well, it was a result of a lot of legal wrangling. It's also the result of a history of mistreatment of Native Americans. There was a lot of complex land disputes. There was a lawsuit brought on by the tribes that wound up in the U.S. Supreme Court, and that eventually led up to an act of Congress signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt to make it a federally protected area in 1937. Today, any Native American enrolled in a recognized tribe can quarry at the site, even after it was a federally protected area.
So how has the site and the exhibits there changed in recent decades?
Well, I had mentioned that I had gone to the monument when I was younger and that it had been different. As you drive through Pipestone, you can kind of see the remnants of the old way that Pipestone used to be talked about. You'll see roadside attractions where they'll have like an old-timey Western fort, the old-timey cowboys and Indians style branding, a little bit ahistorical, less true to modern understandings of the Old West history. A lot of that at the Pipestone National Monument was switched out in 2020, and it was switched out in favor of talking to the tribes and asking what their perspective was on Pipestone, emphasizing kind of their spiritual, ancestral links to Pipestone.
So there are signs now that talk about broken treaties and unfair treatment of Native Americans, but I understand that might change. What's going on?
I believe federal officials, they're now reviewing whether they want to remove books and signs with historic references about that harsh treatment of Native Americans from sites such as the Pipestone National Monument. Things about the forced relocations, treaty violations, and the boarding schools. That is currently in review.
What do you mean by review?
Some of the signs that were posted at Pipestone National Monument ask visitors to alert the government of any information that is negative about either past or living Americans in support of an executive order called Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History.
And I know that our colleagues at the Minnesota Star Tribune will be covering this story as it develops. We'll see what happens. So I know you also talked with one of the rangers there at Pipestone.
Yeah, no, I talked to a ranger at the park, Gabrielle. She was a member of the Yankton Sioux tribe. She shared with me a creation story. Now, these creation stories for the Pipestone, they're really important, but they vary among the different tribes. So she said her father would tell her that there was a flood that swamped the area and killed most of the land's inhabitants. And that blood from the land's inhabitants seeped into the stone, and that's what makes the pipestone red. And the smoke from the pipes is a way for people to communicate with the higher powers. And I don't know, it's just struck me at how interwoven this rock in the ground is with the history, not only of like her family, but her connection to her people. She said, "This is how we pray. This is like our church. It's an incredibly significant place for her and for others in the area."
That sounds really beautiful. So how are the pipes used? I know the term peace pipe is something we've heard a lot, but I understand it's not really accurate.
So the peace pipe. That name came because European Americans always saw the pipes at treaty signings, but they were there. But they were also used for many, many other occasions and daily rituals.
So for you, what was the most interesting thing you learned working on this one?
Let's see. For me, I really enjoyed talking to the pipe carvers, like Travis Erickson, the way he talked about pipestone, because it's not only a craft that he clearly enjoys, that he's put his life into, but it's something that allows him to find a place in the world and a place within his family.
Huh. Well, let's listen to a little bit from your conversation with Travis.
So here's a little bit of my interview of Travis, who is a pipe maker and an honorary advisor to the Pipestone Indian Shrine Board of Directors.
I heard a story, it's an Ojibwe story, how the animal kingdom came together. The world was in chaos and man was abusing his powers, so they needed to send prayers to Creator. And they talked to the eagle, and the eagle says, I'll go, because he flies the highest. And he flew up by the clouds. He was exhausted. He just couldn't quite make it and came back down, made another plan. And then they came up with the hummingbird hides in the eagle's feathers, and he takes them up as high as he can. And when he gets to the point where he can't go any higher, he's all right, little brother, it's your turn now. And the hummingbird comes out and zing, he makes it. And when I heard that story, I said, oh my gosh, I could see it. I could see this eagle head with a hummingbird on top of it, and I carved it.
I'm always amazed at that. Like the idea where like, here is like raw material, here's a block or a slab. And then, people like you can like look at that and visualize 20 steps down the line and like turn it into art, How does that happen? Like what's going on there,
As an artist, because I've explored my skills as an artist, you have a connection to your material. You can create that connection. It's a spiritual connection.
I just was so struck at how passionate he was talking about the things he wanted to carve, like the things he wanted to teach others, and just, I don't know. He just had this way of talking about Pipestone as if it was just this really foundational part of his life.
That is so interesting. Well, thank you so much, JP.
Yeah.
And thanks again to Aidan Thornton in Duluth, who was curious to learn more about the history of Pipestone National Monument. Thanks for listening to Curious Minnesota. Our show is recorded at the Minnesota Star Tribune studio in beautiful downtown Minneapolis. Melissa Townsend produced this show, and the music is by Matt Gilmer. Until next time, stay curious!